Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's week 3. Red Ronas, Men of Honor podcast. This is Dan Kinlan. Week 3, we have a newcomer. It's Homelander's agent and owner of My Homelander for Prez. It's Tom. Tom, how are things tonight?
Hey, Dan. Things are good. Can't complain. Thanks for having me on the pod.
Of course. It's 3 for 3 here with the opponents that I've come up against. And just for those playing at home, it's about 7:45 on Wednesday, the 23rd. You know, we had tried to put out this is going to be Thursdays, but life happens, so sometimes we're doing it Wednesdays. But just so you guys know, in case. Come on, Tom, we're not going to get anything wrong tonight. But if we did,
No, of course not.
Right?
I think the benefit of doing it on Wednesday is you get to see all the waivers come out.
That's true. I think that's definitely the story of the week here. Week 2 really throw in a lot of potential for some teams to shore up their lineup and some to kind of bolster their bench. A lot of injuries, though, Tom. A lot of injuries. All of us, I'm sure, have been paying attention to it. But which one do you think is pretty detrimental to, I don't know, take an NFL team or, this is a fantasy podcast, so probably a fantasy squad?
Well, yeah, it was definitely a painful NFL Sunday. I don't know, man. There's so many names to even pick from. I can't really be objective here because I lost Saquon, so I kind of feel like he was maybe the number one because he's out for the whole season, and he's also such a huge impact to the Giants. But obviously losing McCaffrey and Boza, some of these guys are, hugely important to their team.
Yeah, I mean, I know
McCaffrey is supposed to come back this year with it, so that's good.
Yeah, I saw something where he's been put on the IR. I guess it's a short-term IR. It's only a 3-week thing. Is that new? Do you know anything about that?
I remember them doing a shorter-term IR last year, but I didn't think it was 3 weeks. I thought it was 6 or 8 weeks. So I don't know. It might be new this year.
Huh. I got to look into that a little bit more. But I threw this kind of show doc together for me and Tom, and every day I had to kind of update it because guys were either not as much hurt as we thought or more hurt. And I think one of those guys was certainly Courtland Sutton. And Jesus, did the Broncos probably vault into the top 5 draft next year, right?
Yeah, it's a huge loss for them.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. Saquon, I know that hurts, man. Trust me, I had him for, I think, only 7 of the 13 games last year. So, and being a Giants fan, I feel the pain, brother.
Were you watching the game on Sunday?
I was. I was actually doing split screen between the Giants and the Bills. And I didn't realize how boring the Giants are to watch sometimes. God, it was kind of boring. And then obviously, Saquon got hit pretty hard too. The play before he tore his knee, it looked like his elbow. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is I thought I escaped a huge injury. It looked like he really hurt his arm, and then literally the next play tears his ACL.
Yeah, I mean, this is an awful thing to say, but it might help the Giants with being able to sign him because they'll have more room next year. Instead of offering the extension after this year, they'll wait till the next year. But that's pretty cynical. The other kind of smaller names, not really fantasy wise, are Drew Lock, Garoppolo. As you said, Nick Bosa, more of a defender, but that does affect a lot of the teams in the West and a lot of the NFC East teams that play them this year. So a lot of the running backs maybe get a boost there. So it's not an injury that should go unnoticed.
Did you see who also showed up on the injury report recently? the walking hamstring injury himself, Will Fuller.
I don't understand why he gets hurt every year with the same injury. Do you think he'd switch up his offseason program?
I'm just starting to think he's never had a healthy week. He's just always had hamstring problems, and he's just been playing through it since college, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, you think on that team, what is it? Brandon Cooks gets elevated, but I just think he's washed. But we'll get there in the matchups. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Injuries bring waiver wire pickups, as I was saying. Not as many as maybe a lot of fantasy podcasts or ESPN articles would say in terms of our league. Guys are pretty on point, but any waiver wire pickup that I guess piqued your interest?
Yeah, I mean, I came into the week with the 6th overall waiver, so I kind of had a feeling I wasn't going to get any of the top guys. I really wanted Devontae Freeman. I kind of knew I wasn't going to get him. That was hard to swallow, not being able to grab him after losing Saquon.
And maybe we should. Sorry to cut you off there, Tom. Maybe we should, for the people playing at home here, some of the guys that went in the waivers were Mike Davis, running back for Carolina, Devontae Freeman, as Tom just said, who signed with the Giants, Dion Lewis, again another Giant running back. Those were the 3 main in our league. But go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I think those were like the 3 that I was really targeting. So getting Mike Davis or Devontae Freeman would have been huge for my team because I need running backs. So hopefully I keep moving up that waiver wire and can snag somebody in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it kind of made me think about when we pick our draft spots. Maybe picking. If you pick towards the end of the draft, you really do get that first crack at a potential backup or handcuff. So maybe that's a little strategy people might be able to employ or think about a little bit more, maybe moving forward next year.
Yeah, I never really considered that, but this year with the amount of injuries, it's definitely going to come into play when people are choosing their spots next year.
Yeah, I felt
although next year, no waiver wire priority really. I mean, I guess there still is one, but with Fab, it's like not quite as important to have a higher waiver ranking.
That's right. One of the things that I know Tom and I are super excited for next year is the Fab, and again, that's the free agent acquisition budget. So when we say Fab, we have double A's between that F and B. And Tom brought up something pretty interesting about Fab, and why don't you take that away, Tom?
Well, I mean, I was just kind of looking at the top waivers from this week and even last week, and trying to think of hypotheticals of what they would have gone for if we had a standard $100 budget. I know we're going to be going with $250, but it's kind of curious what you would have maybe spent on a guy like Devontae Freeman or Dion Lewis if you were in need of a running back.
Yeah, I mean, especially if in a league where, running backs are always a premium, right, in fantasy football. But especially when you might be able to get 3 or 4 good weeks out of a Devontae Freeman or Mike Davis, who I think is going to be great. I think he really knows how to catch the ball. And who else are they going to throw the ball to? At the backfield, especially there for Carolina. And they're going to be down a lot. So I think Mike Davis is a great play. And sometimes you only need 7 wins to get in the playoffs. So if $60 or $70 or even, if half of your Fab budget got you 3 wins, that might be worth it. I don't know. It's going to depend on, did you draft a lot of wide receivers or not, but Mike Davis might be worth 2.5 wins.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think this week in particular, there's so many people that need a running back that everyone would have been going crazy with the bid. I wouldn't have been surprised to see somebody go into the 60% of their budget just trying to land one of these top guys. Exactly.
And just to take a look, I was just clicking on it here as Tom was talking about Fab. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people wanted Mike Davis. That includes Jed, who got him, and T-Mac. Looks like Mason, Tom, you're in there. I'm in there. Blaze is in there, and Barry also as well. So there was a lot of people that wanted him. So, certainly I think half your budget, even on a guy that like that, because you never know when is McCaffrey coming back? Look at what happened to Saquon last year with the same injury.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's going to be a big contributor right off the bat just based on how many catches he had last week.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe there's going to be another guy that drops. This whole COVID thing, maybe we should have seen it coming with all these injuries, or maybe not. I don't know. It could just be a freak week.
Yeah. I wanted to call out one other guy that I thought was a good pickup, who I kind of wish that I had tried to waiver him or at least woken up early enough to grab him, was Drew Sample, the tight end for Cincinnati. After Uzama went down last week, he was like a target hog for
Actually, I think it was T-Mac. T-Mac picked him up at about 7:10 a.m. this morning. Yeah, it's a good call. I mean, Joe Burrow might need some kind of safety blanket, right?
Yeah. Especially with an offensive line like that.
Ugh, yeah. Geez, just ask Marvin with Joe Mixon, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. I early on in this podcast here, I always like to give some of the top week performers of the past week. Dak Prescott at quarterback, 450 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. I think I have that right, Tom, right? I mean, shit, you probably watched the whole game.
Dak, pay this man Prescott. Man, he was looking really good this week. He's been looking good, like pretty much since the Cowboys drafted him.
Yeah,
it's time to get this guy under contract.
Yeah, I do agree. Running back was Aaron Jones, 168 yards, rushing, 68 receiving, another 3 touchdowns as well. Aaron Jones looking like a top 2, top 3 pick, or maybe he should have been. We'll see if those touchdowns keep up. Definitely benefits when the Packers are in front. Wide receiver was Calvin Ridley, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tight end goes to Mr. Tyler Higbee or Tyler Higbeast. Tyler Hig. I mean, there's been a lot of nicknames thrown out there, but 3 TDs, Tom. That's your guy.
I needed that. That was a big play for me. I needed all 3 of those touchdowns. I could have just imagined Big Cat watching like Red Zone at home and just dying every time he sees another touchdown come up for Higbee.
You're probably right. It shows what sometimes that tight end spot can really depend on your matchup. Last week, Mark Andrews was the top guy, but this week only 1.95 points. I guess we're still going to talk about kickers because it's fun, especially because who won it. Young Ho Koo. That's Drew's team. And I put in our show doc, and I'm just going to kind of read it word for word here, Tom. Why the fuck is his team named Big Dick Brady? He doesn't even have Tom Brady. He's not even on his team.
I guess that's what Brady does to you. I mean, he just... I don't know. Being a Bucs fan, he's got the Brady fever.
I guess. I'm just concerned as to why either Drew knows about the big dick or is thinking about the big dick. But, listen, he's protecting our streets and sometimes even our playgrounds. The defense was Indianapolis, 18 points. Another defense that had more than 15. Again, obviously that's the top defense, but, we move on. Actually, a little bit of audible here, Tom. What do you think about the new rules for the kickers? Do you like it? Do you think it's better?
I do like it. I think it's more fair. I haven't run into a situation where a kicker's kicking like a 20-yard field goal. I think that might feel bad when you're not actually getting 3 for a field goal. The only thing I don't like is when you kind of look at you click on their notes and it would show how many 30-yard field goals, how many 40, how many 50. They don't show up in those columns anymore, so that's kind of annoying to not be able to see that. But you just total all the yards, and you can kind of do the math yourself, I guess. Yeah,
and you may have to go to a different site to kind of figure some of that stuff out. But, at this point, we all grew up with the internet. If you can't figure that out, then you don't deserve to know it, personally. But it does look weird when all of a sudden I'm looking at my kicker and they have 138 yards, and I don't understand why. But
how are you feeling about it?
I like it. It's weird to look at. I think visually it is weird, but that's with any kind of change. I think the reason we did it is still solid in terms of the fact that we need to have kickers be I think more attuned to what their skill is. And I guess I'm liking the fact that you could have a bunch of 15, 17, and 18 field goals last year and you get 9 points versus this year you're only getting what? Maybe closer to 5. So I think that's more fair. Also, fuck kickers. I know some people want to get rid of them too.
Yeah. Well, I don't agree with that, but
I'll probably never go that far, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I don't know if you got the votes for that yet, but you can keep shopping it.
Question to you, Tom. I kind of called this the commissioner's bump. Marvin, this is a shout out to you. Lowest points scored against you, Marvin. You find yourself in first place. Seems kind of bullshit to me, Commish. Are you doing something with the settings? Doing something with the rules? What do you think about this commissioner's bump, Tom?
definitely seems like he's got a bump. He's the only guy at the top of the rankings with less than 200 points again.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say is that his team has been putting up a lot of points. So even if he was going up against the team scoring against him, he still might be 2-0 just because he's had Rodgers and Aaron Jones having great games both week 1 and week 2. So I'll be interesting to see how his next couple weeks go, because I think that might balance out. And I don't know if the Packers run into a bad matchup, we might see Marvin take a loss here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I have two things about that, Tom. First, I can just hear Marvin yelling at whatever apparatus he's listening from, saying, "Fuck you, Tom. I actually have scored, or you've had less points scored against you." It's the difference of, I think, like 0.4 or something of the sort. The other thing, too, is...
I was hoping no one would notice that.
Well, what I think, though, too, is I think Marvin's in trouble week potentially 12 to 15 if he does eventually make the playoffs, if he has Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones. If the Packers keep winning and they shut those guys down, Marvin could be ripe for the taking in the playoffs if he does make it that far.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I don't know if I really believe in the Packers like that, but I mean, if they keep winning, it's going to be hard to argue with.
Yeah. Interesting idea you threw at me here about the potential for not a big thing, maybe a mini little punishment for the team that does end up with the least amount of points against, especially if it's a team that makes the playoffs. I know we've had a couple of teams tied for sixth place, and points go to the victor, but sometimes that also is for the points against.
Yeah, I think if you don't make the playoffs, there's no point in really punishing that person, because they already, they didn't really have much going for them the last season. But yeah, if you made the playoffs and had the least points against, should be some sort of scarlet letter on you to show that you didn't work quite as hard as everyone else. I guess the one exception would be is if you were also the highest points scored person, but I don't know if we've ever seen that.
Yeah, usually that
the most points that the least against.
Yeah, usually you find that situation, that person probably having a bye.
Right.
But something to think about. There's been a little bit more chatter in the group chat about, hey, can you guys give us a little bit more about the Survivor update? And the people that didn't play Survivor are about to skip ahead or turn this off at this point. But this past week, no one was eliminated. There were 7 people left. We went 7 for 7. 6 of us went with the Niners. And one person here chose the Arizona Kyler Murrays, which was Steve. So congratulations, Steve. You can now probably pick them this week in advance to week 4. And I think they have actually a pretty good matchup. The Cardinals do, although they're turning out to be a little bit better than I think maybe all of us thought. But they do have the Lions this week. They're currently a 5.5 favorite.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder how long this trend is going to last, where people just pick against the Jets, because it kind of seems like a foolproof plan here. Like, I don't see too many teams actually losing to the Jets. I guess you got to be careful of the spread, but I don't know. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be riding the Colts this week.
Yeah, and currently on Yahoo Survivor, the top team picked for week 3 is Indianapolis. They do play the Jets this week, and it's pretty overwhelming. It was 51.5% this morning. It's still about that in terms of picking against the Jets for Indy. And, I clearly I'm thinking about picking them here, Tom. I won't let you guys peek behind the curtain too much, but it made me think in terms of strategy for Survivor. I usually go, there's probably 2 ways to play it, maybe more than 3. Do you do 1 week at a time, or do you actually kind of look down the road and see where you can pick some teams off here? And I need to pick the Patriots in week 6, or the Steelers in week 9. How do you play it, Tom?
Well, I've never made it past week 4, so I never even bothered looking that far down the line.
Okay.
Hence why my team is named "Got to make it to week 5 this year."
Fair enough.
I usually just go with the no-brainers, the ones that seem the most obvious, but historically that hasn't worked either, because at some point the obvious one is going to knock out a bunch of teams. So So I'm still kind of on the fence this week about whether or not to take the Colts. They almost feels like a trap pick. Like, it's so obvious, why wouldn't I pick it? But then you start looking at the line, like 10.5. Jets really need to win. Colts, I don't know if I really believe in Colts as much as some people do. So I don't know. Thinking about it.
I will tell you this. I'll give you this much. I am not going to pick the Colts this week. And
All right.
just make sure, and I'll probably do it myself, but I'll probably go back and delete this portion if I have my pick wrong. But feeling pretty. There's a couple of picks this week that I think are actually pretty solid. Depending on how you think. Well, a lot of people picked Pittsburgh already, but they do play the Texans, who again we talked about don't have Will Fuller, may not be able to score a lot of points anyways, and that Pittsburgh D is fantastic. I'm not sure how many people have them left, but even you can even take the Niners against the Giants. There's a couple of spots here, as I just said before. Arizona potentially against the Lions is out there too. So I don't know, something to think about. If you guys want more Survivor, if you want less Survivor, let us know. I know it probably only accounts for maybe half the league, but I don't know. It's a fun aside to kind of talk about and think about. It's something that I always try to do every year. Moving on here, and we'll certainly get to some of the matchups. This podcast will probably be the normal length as we usually have it, but we come to the part of the podcast that I try to give my guests here the floor. So this is the Tom topic or Tom's corner. So Tom, the floor is yours, man. Talk about anything you want fantasy football related, as long or as short as you want.
All right, I'll probably keep this pretty short. But so I know for the last couple of years we've had a lot of people complaining about the lack of depth on the free agent wire, and this past year we were voting on whether or not to remove a utility spot, and it didn't quite get the votes, but seems like it's getting some traction. And I wanted to propose an alternative solution. I think instead of removing a utility spot next year, we should consider removing a wide receiver spot. It would bring us down to 14 total roster spots, so it's like a little less fun for the draft, but it would certainly add more depth to the free agent list. And I would prefer that because it still leaves teams with a little bit more flexibility to play, 3 tight ends if you want, or 4 running backs. And to me, that's part of the fun of having the 2 utility spots. So I would definitely prefer not to remove one of those. And to kind of piggyback off of that idea, I know people don't really like the idea of IDP, but I think if we did eliminate a spot, adding an IDP spot could be a good way to, inject some more points into our matchups and just give people another angle to kind of look for ways to dig your team out of a hole. And we could try and find ways to balance the scoring so that way there's no defensive player that's really going to go out and dominate and put up 20 points a week or anything like that. So I think we should at least consider it. I'm going to propose it again next year. Feel free to vote it down like you always do. But yeah, those are my 2 topics that I wanted to go over.
Well, let me break that down for you here because I want to talk to you about the first thing about the wide receiver slot and maybe a little bit less about the defensive player. But so what you're saying is we currently have 3 wide receiver spots. You want to make it 2. Is that what you're saying?
I want to make it 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So currently we have, as everybody knows, 1 quarterback, 3 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, 1 tight end and 2 flex. That's 9 spots for skill players, reducing it to 8 and potentially, if there is a defensive spot. If there wasn't a defensive spot, Tom, would you want to keep the bench at 4 or would you want to make it 5? Do you want to just eliminate a roster spot entirely? What would you do with that wide receiver slot? Would you just throw it back to the waiver wire or would you add it to the bench, which would then put us from 4 currently to 5 potentially?
I think you got to throw it back into the waiver wire so that way there's more players for people to pick up. And yeah, because it's too hard right now. Every week, so many teams already have most of the free agent pickups that all the fantasy sites will be writing about. Be like, target this guy, target that guy. It's like, all right, that guy got drafted, and this other guy got picked up week 1. So it's kind of hard to even really like enjoy the waiver wire when there's very few players out there.
I would agree. I think that goes back to our earlier conversation about the waiver wire. There was only a couple of guys that were really going to be move makers, so to speak, in the upcoming weeks. You can kind of bolster your bench if you want to, but I think you may be right there, Tom. You might be onto something. I don't remember the history behind the league in terms of why we do have 3 wide receivers. Maybe somebody can enlighten me on that. But let's spend 2-3 minutes on the IDP, okay? You and I have kind of gone through this, just you and I privately, a little bit in the past. But sometimes what I've also seen with leagues in terms of trying to limit one defensive player being dominant is you can kind of switch years. So, like, 1 year it's only defensive linemen you can draft and drop. 1 year it's only cornerbacks. 1 year it's only safeties. 1 year it's only linebackers, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think about that? I don't know if Yahoo lets us do that, but I do think you can lock out certain players.
I think that would be a cool idea.
Like once every 3 years?
Like defensive backs or linemen, yeah. If we have the ability to do that, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
I think Yahoo does allow you to customize the value of the stats for the individual players. So instead of just like assuming that an interception is going to be worth 2, you could maybe even just reduce it to like 1 point, and sacks, instead of sacks being 1, they're 0.5. And like you can kind of hedge it so that like these defensive players aren't going to be putting up these huge numbers, unless that's what people would want. But for me, I don't think I would want the defensive player to really impact a week the way that a regular offensive player could.
I agree. And even if we can't lock players out, what we could do is just kind of make all their points just 0. So even if you picked up a DB and it's a defensive lineman year, your DB is not going to score you any points. So,
yeah.
Anyways, something to think about, guys. Always, a nice topic that guys, bring to the table. I don't know about these topics when people bring them up, which I think is the fun part about it. Come to the point of, Tom, your favorite crazy memory. I know last week T-Mac and I talked about ours, something that would only happen to you, or something that happened to your opponent. And if you don't mind, I'm going to potentially read what you sent to me, unless you want to take it away. It's up to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Tom sent to me, look, there was a specific stretch of games in the early mid-2000s by one of the greatest players of all time. Can you guess who I'm referring to? And again, for those playing at home, we're going to give you 6 seconds, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tom, I think it's LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, so this is probably dating me. I mean, most of the league is around my age, but I know like Justin and a couple of the other guys are a little bit younger. So I don't know if they were even playing fantasy back then, but I do remember I don't think it was this league. I don't know if our league was even around 15 years ago or 14 years ago. But yeah, in 2006, LT had like one of the craziest stretches of games, and it went right up into the last week of the fantasy playoffs. So it went from week 7 to week 16, and he totaled 1,500 yards and 25 touchdowns in 9 weeks. Most running backs don't put up those types of numbers in a full season. He was just on a different level that year. And, if you're not familiar with that season, I think most people probably are, but just do yourself a favor and go back and look at the game logs, because it's crazy to see the numbers he was putting up that whole season.
Yeah, it's absolutely bananas. 28 rushing touchdowns for the year. He averaged 113 yards a game. Absolutely.
And like he contributed so much on the receiving end too.
I was about to say he had 508 receiving yards. Only actually 3 receiving touchdowns, which kind of shocks me a little bit, but I think it's because he just ran them in all the time. But I mean, shit, I think he had 55, 60 receptions as well. Like it's I think even better than the Saquon year that Saquon had, but I mean, it's not as good as last year's Christian McCaffrey. But to what you're saying, because I kind of looked it up, I assumed you were talking about Christian McCaffrey, so I had my tab open. What you're saying is it wasn't just that year. It was his stretch from 2001 to 2008. he had over 1,300 yards every year except for one of those. So he was the number one pick every year.
Yeah, he was unbelievable in the early mid 2000s. But yeah, I was more referring to the stretch of games from week 7 to week 16. So like the end of the playoffs, the stretch of like I got to win these games to make the playoffs. He basically would win you the league. If you had LT that year, yeah, I don't know how you could lose it. And the reason that was such a big memory for me is because I remember he led me to win a championship that year.
There you
the
go.
The only year I can kind of remember that was as high as that, like back in the 2000s, was maybe like Larry Johnson or Priest Holmes, like having a crazy year. But
Steven Jackson was
many touchdowns.
Steven Jackson, Fred Taylor was up there. I mean, these are some old school guys. Priest Holmes. But I mean, that was when fantasy started getting big too.
We're in the back in my day portion of the
podcast.
I
think we are. I think we're. It usually means we should probably move on.
Yeah, probably.
But guys, yeah, if I call you on, grab your crazy memory or grab, crazy memories. Let's talk. But moving on to some of the meat and potatoes of the portion of the podcast. We are going to run through some of the matchups here, but before we do, and I put this show doc together Monday, Tuesday, and things have changed since then, but there were some team name changes, so you're going to have to give me and Tom a little bit of leeway here. Again, Drew, defend yourself. Why are you Big Dick Brady? But we're going to start with Real Mosterts versus Gronk. Love 2 girls, 1 cup. This is Blaze versus T-Mac. And I'll kind of start it off, Tom, with taking a look at Blaze's team. Looks like we have a substitution at quarterback. He did put Cam Newton in and has benched Drew Brees. So Cam Newton's going to take on the Vegas Raiders at 1 o'clock, currently at 20 points. Probably gets around that. This team is freaking loaded with running backs, but he does have Deion Lewis for the Giants. I think he gets most of the carries this week. Still not thrilled by the wide receiving core. What do you think about this team currently sitting at 2-0 and a 5-point favorite this week?
It's hard to see too many teams beating Blaze's team with the current lineup that he has. I don't know. Like, I know that it's hard to see anybody really beating him when he's got Jonathan Taylor going up against the Jets and Cam against the Raiders. I don't know. Like, the Raiders looked all right, but they definitely seem like you can give up points, and Cam has been a beast so far. I think one of the things that interests me the most is that he's got Pittsburgh's defense going up against Houston, who has, so T-Mac has Deshaun Watson playing against Pittsburgh. So
yep.
If somehow Pittsburgh is able to really shut down Houston, that could be a huge swing of points either way. So that game in particular might actually determine this matchup.
Also, Blaze also has David Johnson, currently slated for 12 points in his running back slot. I think 12 is a little generous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's a little high because of his receiving potential. But yeah, anybody against Pittsburgh, you saw what they did to Saquon. 12.
Right.
I don't see him doing much better than Saquon, but then again, it's hard to not do better than that.
Well, why don't we flip the coin? What do you think about T-Mac's matchups?
I like T-Mac's team. He's got a lot of good wide receivers. Got Dalvin Cook going up against Tennessee, which not maybe a great matchup, but Dalvin Cook is still pretty safe. Is Judy going to play versus Tampa Bay? It looks like he's questionable right now.
Yeah, so what I've seen is that the fact that Sutton's out, I know Judy was limited today in practice, but I don't feel like they have to play him. I mean, unless they just want to take the loss, fine. But I know they have a backup quarterback with Driscoll, but I think Jerry Judy's a great play this week, especially if he does play. Especially, I think he becomes maybe the 1 or 1.5 for that wide receiving core.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be projected a lot more points the weeks going forward. If he's healthy enough to play, that could be a huge swing in T-Mac's direction.
Yeah, I think that this week is T-Mac's coming out party. Cooper Kupp literally can't play worse than he has already. Plenty of targets. Terry McLaurin's a stud. And Kenny Golladay, I think, is the key to this matchup. He didn't play in the first 2 weeks, but apparently he is expected to play this week. And he was limited in practice, but the limited that Kenny Galladay was today, I think, is more just a cautionary tale. I think Kenny Galladay does play. If he does, that's big. That's really big for T-Mac. But it's tough to pick against Blaze's team. But quite frankly, I'm probably going to do it, especially if Deshaun Watson can put up points, which I'm not confident about. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say T-Mac gets his first win and Blaze gets his first loss.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take Blaze. Until somebody can dethrone him, I don't know. I got to keep picking Blaze in the league pick'em.
Without McCaffrey, I don't know if he can do it.
I don't know. He's got the deepest running back crew, I think, in the league.
He does. Blaze, don't take it wrong. Next matchup is CD's Nuts versus Big Dick Brady. This is LJ versus Drew. And I kind of want to call this matchup the group text talk shit matchup. These two have kind of been going at it. Obviously, not arguments of anger, arguments of understanding. But I still find it funny. I didn't know that they were going to find each other so early in the season. But Tom, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, I mean, this is the most overly sexual matchup too, with CD's Nuts versus Big Dick Brady.
A lot of nuts, a lot of dick, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think this should be a good shit talking week. I'm looking at LJ's team right now. I'm not in love with Goff versus Buffalo, but he's not been a terrible play, and I do kind of think that Burrow will probably outscore him, but I don't blame LJ for not playing him, with it still being pretty early in Burrow's career. But I think if it was me, I'd probably make that swap.
Okay.
And then he's got a bunch of really great receivers with Hopkins and Diggs and CeeDee Lamb. It's like, I don't know, LJ's team's looking a little nasty right now.
Yeah, and so nasty that Yahoo currently has LJ at 115 points and Drew's team at 97. It's an 18-point swing. It's gone up and down between 15 and 20 all week. I don't know, Tom, I don't even think this thing's going to be close. And the reason why is that Julio Jones didn't practice today, is my understanding. I don't think Julio Jones plays this week. Apparently he's got a hamstring issue, and he's had it since after week 1, which is why week 2 didn't go very well, is what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. Also, too, I don't really think that Leonard Fournette's going to get another 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he does, fine, whatever. But, this is also a double tight end squad, and also Deshaun Jackson in the flex. I think this is going to be an absolute rout. I think LJ might beat him by 30. I don't think it's going to be close, man.
To play devil's advocate here, I'm pretty sure Drew was not projected to win last week, and I think Fournette was projected like 3 points or something. And, I think when Drew picked Fournette ahead of Ronald Jones and ahead of a lot of other players, everyone kind of laughed at him and was like, what are you doing? But, he's made some picks like this before that actually ended up turning out okay. And I still think it kind of leans towards LJ, but I wouldn't be surprised if, Matt Ryan ends up having a good week. And if Julio does play, you can't really count him out.
Do you feel confident enough to put a little money on this?
Oh, you want me to take Drew for money right now?
Money where your mouth is. Guys, this is the definition of money where your mouth is.
You give me 2 to 1 odds, and I'll take Drew.
Done. Let's do it. $10, $20?
Yeah, $20.
$20 on the board. Don't let me down here.
I'm gonna regret that one.
Moving on, we have Big Waller Brand, the commish, Marvin, versus Mr. Jones's Freak Shark, which is Barry. Barry, hopefully I'm saying your new team name right. I can't imagine why you switched it. Devin Singletary's been, so good with his 19 carries and 86 yards this year. But I'm not here to bag on him, but I am here to evaluate your team first. Russell Wilson apparently is cooking, and he is going to cook quite a bit, I think. He's playing your Dallas team this week. Tom, and I think that should be another high-scoring game. I think that they're finally letting Russ do his thing. It might be because they might think that the Seattle Seahawks defense is not as good as it was in prior years. But Marvin Jones Jr., again, if Galladay plays, he's obviously – some people say he would be less valuable, but also you got to imagine which DBs and safeties you can't double and whatnot. But don't like Singletary, never have. Chris Herndon to me is a drop. As long as Adam Gase is the coach there, he does run double tight end sets as a double block. Keenan Allen will be fine. Not entirely sure why Harrison Butker is at 11 points for the kicker, although I guess I can't imagine they're to be doing a lot of kicking in terms of field goals. Been wrong before, hopefully not wrong this week. But again, that Baltimore D is not bad, so I'm not thrilled by Tyreek Hill. What do you think about Barry's team, Tom?
Barry's team is looking pretty good this week. I think the Tyreek Hill play is that could be a big one.
You got to play him, right? Obviously.
A lot of people are expecting a shootout with KC and Baltimore, and if that ends up turning out to be a hugely high point scoring game, his kicker is going to get a lot of points, and Tyreek Hill I could easily see him getting 2 touchdowns and 100+ yards. I would be nervous going up against Tyreek Hill Monday night.
Yeah, it's a 53 over-under right now for that game.
53. I think the over.
I would too. Flip side, as we talked about, Big Waller Brand is led by mainly the Packers. He might as well rename his team that. Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers. Double Aaron, double Aarons. That's a Sunday night game against the Saints. I think both of them have, again, a fantastic week. I'll give the same projection I did last week for them. Aaron Rodgers does well in the first half, gets a big league. Aaron Jones does extremely well in the second half. Joshua Kelly is a great play here. I'm a little upset that I did drop him. He's going to get a bunch of yards and maybe some catches, but at some point it's going to be an Austin Eckler game. I don't know when that happens. Joe Mixon has got to light it up here for Kamish. Joe Mixon has been the most disappointing draft pick of the year. I do that and do say that as though, again, injuries for me don't matter for disappointing. But Joe Mixon's got to have a game, and I hope for Kamish it's this week.
I agree that he needs to have a good game, but going up against Philly, I don't know. I feel like his projected points should be a little bit lower. Like until Mixon has had a game of that caliber, like projecting him for 13 or 14 just seems a little bit high.
I think they need to line him up as a wide receiver.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. They
should do that.
They need to use him more like a Kamara or an Eckler. I think he's got the capability, but I don't know if Burrow knows the playbook well enough.
Well, he's out there slinging. He threw 60+ times last game. Or was it? I can't remember if that was the first week, but
that's fair.
Might as well put him out on, spread him out wide.
Yeah. Tom, who you got in the matchup?
I think I'm going to take Barry this week, but I think it's going to be close. And it's really going to come down to the primetime games because Marvin's got Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones, who could put up a shit ton of points. And then Barry's got Tyreek Hill and Butker on Monday night. These guys are going to be chewing their fingernails all through the weekend.
I refuse to pick against Marvin 3 weeks in a row. Marvin, I think you're going to win. Next matchup. Here's my number, so call me Brady. Justin versus Drop Jed Gorgeous. Jed and Justin right now, they're literally 0.2 points apart according to Yahoo. Jed, how's it going being 0-2 and having 6 picks in the first 4 rounds? Yeah, I know. Your number 1 pick is out, Michael Thomas. Not sure if he plays. Tom, what are you hearing about that?
Michael Thomas?
Yes.
I don't think he's going to play. That's what Yahoo is saying, so I'm going to believe what Yahoo is saying, but it also seems like it's just it's a tough injury to only miss 1 week for.
Yeah, agreed.
But they are the Sunday night game, so it could put him in a tough spot where he's got to make a decision at 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock if they still have ruled him as a game time decision.
Yeah, and getting Mike Davis is absolutely paramount for this team. Jed did well to get him off waivers. That's a pretty stud lineup right now for running backs. Chubb, Miles Sanders, Mark Ingram, and Davis there for the Panthers. That's a lot of points projected there. Again, we talked about how we think that the Seahawks and Cowboys could kind of sling it out. A lot of points projected in this matchup for both teams. Kyler Murray against Detroit, almost at 21 points. Jeez, I'm kind of in. I think maybe Yahoo might be a little bit over on both teams, but I'm impressed. What do you think about Justin's team right now?
Justin's team is looking good. Beckham is still one of those question marks. He's projected for 10 points. He had that touchdown last week, but if he didn't have that touchdown, he really wouldn't have any good games this year. So I feel like that projection is maybe a little bit high. But I really like Metcalf. I think he's an absolute stud. He's going to be a beast for a long time. He's got Will Fuller in the lineup, so maybe he will play this week. So if Will Fuller is actually healthy and out there, that could be a big bonus for him. Kai Gurley and Henry and Montgomery, it's a pretty good three-headed monster of running backs. I think Justin's team is looking good enough to beat Jed's team this week. Kyler Murray's the one that I'm not sure about. If Kyler has like a sick game, it's going to be hard to overcome it. But with Josh Allen, maybe he can neutralize all the points coming from Kyler.
Yeah, I usually don't take or try to pick teams that have two tight ends, so I'm gonna pick Jed here. I think he gets his first win.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Justin.
All right, have we agreed yet, Tom? Damn, how about it?
We've agreed to not agree.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Next matchup is Yahtzee. That's Big Cat taking on Maurice in a Fleece. Yahtzee's a new team name, Tom. I don't understand it. Am I missing something? Did I not see something during the week? Does Yahtzee mean anything to you?
So I think Yahtzee means he had 5 injuries. That's my guess.
Oh.
Last week.
I'm not impressed.
I don't know if they all got injured last week, but it looks like there's 5 injuries on his team currently. So that's my guess.
Wow. Okay. Geez. Yeah, I guess you're right. Now that I'm looking at the team, this is the one matchup I didn't really look at previous to the show, but I guess Devontae Adams is the one where he's probably the most upset about, huh?
I would think so.
Yeah.
That's a big loss.
Big loss, but Gesicki, damn, he had a game last week, but it still didn't go too well for Big Cat, did it?
Nope. Just got edged out by Higbee.
The Hig Beast. It's going to be interesting to see how the Buffalo Bills incorporate Moss against the Rams. I know, again, that he's technically the second running back there, but the concern, I guess, is from the Yahtzee is that, again, Zach Moss didn't practice this week. There might not be a lot for us to talk about it. Half of his lineup is injured. Should we just switch to the side?
Yeah, I think so.
What do you got here on Maurice and a Fleece?
Anybody that's got Edwards-Helaire in like any league is going to be looking at one of like the best teams, I would think, because every week he's got a chance to put up 20 plus points. And Monday night again, I'm thinking between Mark Andrews and Edwards-Helaire, it's going to be tough to watch those guys just load up the points on you on Monday night. Willie and Fred also have Dak Prescott, and they've got Kareem Hunt. So there's a couple of big names that are here. And interestingly enough, they have the 2 Tampa Bay wide receivers. So Dan's got Godwin. Willie and Fred have Mike Evans. Somehow, maybe if Mike Evans has a stinker and Godwin goes off, that can kind of make this matchup a little bit more even. But I see just too many points for Willie and Fred.
Yeah, I do too. This matchup is currently almost a 15-point spread. I'm taking Willie and Fred, Tom.
Yeah, I'm taking them as well.
All right, second to last matchup here is Jake from State Farm. Steve taking on Won't Let You Down, Miss Jackson. That's Mason Horn. And, this looks like right now about a 6-7 point difference. Tom, do you want to talk about Steve's team first?
Sure. I see that Steve is going with not Carson Wentz anymore. He's going with Minshew Mania
going with the mustache
on Thursday night. and I kind of like the move. He's been playing really well.
Me
He's
too.
going up against Miami. I think that's a solid play. He's also got Hollywood Brown and Zeke, like a couple of top players that I think could really carry his team to a high point total this week. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about this matchup is we have some potential for like cancellation points. Steve's got Minshew, and Mason has Keelan Cole. Mason's got Lamar Jackson, and Steven's got Hollywood Brown.
Fair point.
Maybe you can kind of limit the amount of points that the quarterbacks are putting up if you get those receiver touchdowns this week. So yeah, I mean, another guy that I think on Steve's team that could have a good week is Robbie Anderson. I've been pretty critical of him ever since I drafted him for 1 year, and I thought he was going to have a sick year, and he just stunk, and he just got a bad attitude, and I just don't like him. But you can't argue with 100-yard games back to back, so that could be another big one for him this week.
You can. I think Melvin Gordon goes off for Steve's team, given the fact, again, we talked earlier on, a lot of injuries there, especially if Courtland Sutton's not there. I think they employ some dink and dunk. Wouldn't shock me if Melvin Gordon has 8 or 9 catches, but flip that side to Mason's team. 8 or 9 catches is the norm for Alvin Kamara with Michael Thomas gone. So I think maybe whoever wins that matchup wins it outright. If the Cowboys are up and they can just feed Zeke, Steve will take it. I don't know if Mason's team has enough firepower to really get it done. What I do assume is that Mason is going to be down pretty much all week until Sunday night, where the high-scoring game of New Orleans and Green Bay gets his kicker involved, and then Lamar Jackson can come over the top on Monday night. I think Steve is going to be the one biting his nails. I hesitate to make Steve 0-3, so I'm going to go Steve is going to take the win here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is just because Freeman was just picked up, but it is interesting that Mason currently has Freeman on his bench. It looks like there's a couple guys that are currently questionable, so maybe Mason
did not see that. Oh shoot, that's right.
Freeman in, but I think I think that Mason just has enough top guys that I think there's a good chance that he'll edge out this victory. So I'm going to go with Mason.
Also, I see Mason has Evan Engram too, so I keep forgetting. In terms of the Giants, Sterling Shepard is out, so that's one less target he has to deal with. So maybe he gets subbed in. So I guess that is a possibility. Sometimes Wednesday night lineups are not Sunday morning lineups, so I guess we will see.
That's true. I mean, it's not a great matchup going up against San Francisco.
It's not.
San Francisco lost
without Nick Bosa,
big defensive players. So maybe San Francisco is actually not going to be as tough of a matchup as people are thinking. Probably.
But Tom, that does bring us to our matchup. The last matchup of the night, both 1-1 teams, currently a 3-point spread. Tom, I can't talk about my team first. You are the guest. Pick your poison. What you got?
Well, I'm not thrilled about having to go up against Josh Jacobs. He's been looking great all year, and I just imagine him having at least 2 touchdowns in a big game against New England. Chris Carson, another player who I think is going to have another big week. Not so sure about Gibson. I think it's clear that they want to use him. I just don't think the Redskins are very good, so I'm kind of hoping that he doesn't go off this week. But really, I think it's going to come down to one player in particular, and that's going to be Calvin Ridley. He is looking really, really dangerous, and I sure hope he doesn't have another 100-yard, 2-touchdown game against me, or else people might start talking about how he might have overtaken Julio as the number 1 guy in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of looking at your team, obviously Patrick Mahomes scares the shit out of me, especially if that's going to be, as we talked about, to a high over-under. Similar to the previous matchup, we said, if I am not up by a decent amount heading into Monday, I'm so, fucked pretty much. Jerick McKinnon to me is a little bit high. I don't know who's going to run that backfield. against the Giants, someone's going to score. Love that you have Gaskin. I completely missed on him. I don't know why I didn't have my research done on that. But Allen Robinson's been pretty shit for the Bears, so he's probably due. Although, in terms of also having the fact that Michael Gallup is, I feel like he's always on your team, and he always does well against me. It might just be the fact that Michael Gallup just knows that I'm a Giants fan. But what's your thoughts on Tyler Boyd this week? He's been an enigma for me this year.
Coming into the season, I thought Boyd was going to have a great year, and the Bengals' offensive line just looks so bad. And I believe in Burrow, and I believe in that team. I think long term, but until they can start giving Burrow some time, I'm not sure that Boyd is going to be a consistent guy. He's already shown that he hasn't been able to put up big numbers in the first 2 weeks. I know Dan was pretty salty about that touchdown he got late in the game on last week.
Yeah, he was.
But without that touchdown, I'd be looking at less than 100 yards and 0 touchdowns total for Tyler Boyd right now. So I'm really hoping he comes out and has a good week for me this week.
Well, let's put it this way. If I'm not up by 20 by 7 o'clock Sunday night, you've probably won the matchup. This is pretty close. I don't know if I'm really going to change out too much for my bench, but I'm going to take myself here. I know you're shocked to hear that, Tom.
Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and take myself as well.
I do get the benefit of being the first guy to play you without Saquon, so I will knock on some wood here, and hopefully, that does come through for me. But Tom, thank you for joining me tonight, this Wednesday night. I'm probably gonna get into some NBA here. You got a pick for the game tonight? Heat versus Celtics. Boston currently at -3.5.
I'm gonna ride the hot hand and take the Heat.
There we go. Me too. Guys, thanks for tuning in tonight. As always, appreciate it. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what more you want. And good luck to everybody in week 3. See ya.